I am Daniel Lucas, and welcome to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. He is the author of these TV novels, no other than Mr. Kalimaxos. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Kali. And can you please introduce yourself?
Hi, I am Kalimaxos, as you and readers may see me on Amazon and on Twitter. I write novels that include steamy sex, and but they're mainly stories about people. I reside in the United States. I'm originally from Greece. This is my name is a pen name because of many reasons. I can't exactly use my personal name.
Kalimaxos, what does it mean in Greek word?
Kalimaxos was a historical figure in Herodotus's histories. The poor guy ended up dying in the Battle of Marathon in 491 BCE, fighting on the battlefield at Marathon, which is just to the east of Athens.
Wow, sounds interesting. So, Mr. Kali, in every novel that you are writing, is there are always steamy scenes?
Yes, there are. The the premise and the part that drives me in writing these books is I'm a big believer that human sexuality is part of the human experience. And when writing books, making movies, everywhere else that we see in our society, it seems to be hidden in the closet. Once in a while you may see some of it in movies or in books, but by and large, it's treated almost like a sideshow. I go to work, I have my coffee, I see my friends, and oh, I may have sex, and oh, but by the way, let's not talk about that because that's not important. When in reality, sexuality is a very important aspect of our lives, and sometimes it's the driving force into the things that we do and how we live. Very, very big part in divorce, I may say. And having seen the carnage of divorce over the years in my life through friends and family, I decided that I was going to stop being on the sidelines and I was actually going to write about it and write stories about human beings, about people that have, either a sexual dysfunction or they're incompatible. As a matter of fact, sexual incompatibility is the biggest problem between married people. So I touch on those subjects, be it infidelity, be it something physical, something mental that causes issues and problems between people that drives them to go elsewhere. And also, I deal with the issue that some people have a higher sexuality than others, which basically means, once again, there's a disconnect between people, and that causes problems. So the issue is more psychological than it is sometimes physical. And I
Yeah,
include that in my stories.
yeah, that's true. What saying that people don't like talk about sex and they want to be hidden, but people like to do it. People want to perform it, but it stays in the closet.
Yes, one of the reasons why it's an uncomfortable subject for many people. Just the thought of discussing, it for multiple reasons. I mean, we have society, culture, religion, history that basically has brought us to this point in life where we all think that it's, oh, it's taboo, we don't talk about it and all that, and then throw in on top of that any problems people have with it, and then makes them uncomfortable discussing it. But you know, that's where I come in in my books.
Definitely. So, what age do you realize you're good in writing steamy novels?
um, well, I started writing when I was about 12, on and off, different things, different topics. I started writing all different types of things. I mean, from science fiction to um, you name it. I was, learning how to write as a young man. Uh, I didn't start writing erotic things until later in life, until middle age.
Okay.
Basically, once I saw how it was part of our life. When I was young, like all young people, I experimented. So that's where I learned a lot about some of the things that are in my books are also things that I experienced in the different sexual lifestyles during my life. But I didn't start putting it together in terms of actually putting it in stories until middle age.
So, who influenced you to pursue your writing steamy novels?
Um, Believe it or not, a gentleman named Robert Heinlein, the science fiction author. Um,
Wow.
yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with all of his work, but um, there was a certain sexual aspect to many of his stories, where, while most of it was like very futuristic and science fiction, there was also a pushing of the envelope of social and sexual aspects of people's lives. And I found that refreshing and interesting, that not only was he discussing the future, everyone in science fiction has a tendency to just basically write about the spaceships and the technology and space travel, but yet they treat people like as if they were here in the year 2000 or 2023 or whatever. That they don't show human beings in a different light as they would have advanced and become more accepting of different things in life. Heinlein did, and he basically said that some people are going to be this, some people are going to be that, and then some people are going to be more sexually open than others. Um, so I found that very interesting, and it appealed to me. Um,
So, that's the time you are starting to write those novels.
I started experimenting with stories, and the thing that I liked about stories for me always, whenever I read someone else's. Are you familiar with the movie Casablanca?
Yes.
Okay, the the story of Casablanca is a mix of intrigue, romance, and a little bit of humor tossed in. So it's not like one-sided. It's not two-dimensional. It's three-dimensional. There's depth in the story, the characters, the conversation. There's so much said in the conversations between people. So that appealed to me, and I've tried to incorporate a little bit of that into some of my stories. A little bit of humor, a little bit of mystery, depending on the story, and of course, romance, intrigue, and human sexuality, which unfortunately was not in Casablanca. It was made in what, 1941? They were not doing that then.
Yes. at that time is still discreet, right?
Yes, yeah. Well, yeah, yeah. So, okay, boy, would I love to rewrite Casablanca
Can you do
my
it?
way.
Can you do it
You
in the
know,
future?
I think I could. Okay, I think I could, but I don't think that the owners of the story would ever give me permission.
To revise it.
Yeah, I don't want to be sued.
Definitely. At your age right now, do you think that writing steamy novels will be continue until the end of your retirement?
um, in one way or another, yes, because as my, unknown, my mentor Heinlein wrote, he wrote science fiction with a mix of eroticism in it.
If you compare your novels to 50 Shade of Grey,
Some aspects of sexuality um, do include that. I jump around from thing to thing. Um, in the case of some of my stories where it fits, I go to it. There's a story that I have written recently um, where that is an aspect of it that the wife's lover does do some of that with her, not to the extent of whips and chains and dungeons and all that stuff. I don't go that deep into it, but he does exert a certain control over her. So in some regards, I go to it, but not to the level of 50 Shades.
do you think your novels are good for a series or good for a movie?
In my dreams, it could be for everything. But in reality, I know that the way that the world is right now, at best, maybe Netflix or HBO would pick up one of my stories. Either my standalones, like the one that I thought we were going to discuss tonight, or
Let's talk about My Decision. How did you crafted it?
my decision is based on the premise of it is disconnect between two people that are married sexually. They love each other. She finds him attractive. He thinks that she is, and all this. But there's an issue. After they have children, he starts losing interest.
Is that a spoiler? Sorry. Spoiler alert, people.
Yeah, sorry about that. Well, the thing is that it's the main premise of the story.
Okay.
Okay, without going too deep into it, that is basically what happens, and it's the story becomes the quest for her to find out why, to understand, to to get him to change, to be who he is, and all that. And in the end, she ends up having to make a decision as to what to do, which is the title of the story, My Decision. But it's all based on the thing that I was saying before, the incompatibility issue sexually between some people. One wants more, one wants less, one wants this, one wants that. In this case, this is the problem of this lady. Anya is the main character, and she has to cope with this issue.
Okay. So, who influenced you in writing My Decision?
A family member in a similar situation. Like I said earlier, the carnage of marital problems that I've seen in my life, and mind you, I'm just one person amongst almost 8 billion on this planet. And yet I have seen so many people having problems in life with their marriages and their relationships. And I'm like a student of humanity. I like to ask questions, that sometimes makes people uncomfortable. But sometimes you'd be surprised how some people wish that a normal person, someone detached, would say, "What's wrong? What happened?" And you'd be surprised that sometimes how many people will just unburden themselves. And that's what happened in this case. I had an individual who basically told me their story, and the wheels started turning, and my decision came out.
Did you interview the people that involved, or you just observe
Um,
it?
a little bit of both. At first, it was observation, realizing that there were some issues there, and then eventually, I asked one of the two what was wrong, and that person basically at first didn't want to talk about it, and then came to me on their own and said, okay, so this is the deal. And they explained to me that, you know, that person was interested in having a normal sex life with their spouse, and their spouse was not. So that's where the story, and then I ended up talking to the other person, to the other spouse, and boy, talk about somebody being uncomfortable. Um, it took that person, not saying whether it was a he or a she, but it took that person close to 2 months to get back to me.
Okay, sounds interesting, Mr. Carl. So before we go on, I just want to shout out to the people listening, of course, in Greece. After stop in Attica, I have 85% audience share. Central Macedonia at 7%, Crete at 4%, and East Macedonia and Thrace. Greece, thank you so much for supporting this podcast, because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world like Mr. Kalimaxos. So, Mr. Kali, who are your favorite authors in the steamy novels?
Steamy novels. Well, I did mention Heinlein. I have to. Okay. One of the stories that he wrote was called Friday. And while it was not like super detailed in sex, it discussed issues that your average writer would never touch, including up to and including incest, and having sex with multiple partners and stuff like that. Now, as for individual writers, um, I have to be honest here. I've tried not to read other people's work for a reason. I don't want them to influence what I write. I don't want to end up copying what they write. Um, and the reality is, and this is even in non-erotic writing, if you read too much of a writer, before you know it, some of the aspects of their writing rubs off on yours.
There's no
And
more originality of yours.
right. And I wanted to keep me in the stories the way I see it. I could be wrong. People may decide to never buy my book. But at least it's mine, and nobody else is going to question it. And I'll tell you why I do this. There is one writer that I should give credit to, uh, Daniel Quentin Steele. He is in on Amazon, and he wrote some books that I like. One of them is called When We Were Married. It's a series of books. And I found two of the characters in his books, named Paul and Paula, very interesting. And I asked them if I could write um, a prequel to those two people. And he said, why would you want to do that? I pretty much wrote them off. And I said, well, I kind of find them interesting. So he allowed me to write a piece on them under strict rules. You know, you can't go past where I wrote. It has to be a prequel and all that. and I had to put it on a free website. It's on Literotica. He allowed me to write a prequel, and I did. And I, by his orders, I could only do it once, and it had to be on a free website. Well, I did, and it turned out to be some of my best work.
Wow, congratulations.
But I can never put it up for sale because
Okay.
it's based on his characters, and I would be brought up for plagiarism and all that.
Something.
Yeah.
Yes.
So ever since then, I decided that I was no longer going to do anything like that, and I was going to let other people influence me in this, in what I'm doing now. I got to tell you something. I read science fiction and history related stories all the time, but that's not what I write. When I do go into science fiction, I'm worried about it. Am I going to carry some of that over? So as I'm writing, I'm going to have to think and say, okay, now did you get that from somebody else? So it's a double-edged sword, when you read other people's work and then write.
Definitely. So if you describe the writing of your favorite authors, what are they or
Uh,
what is it?
okay, I'll go to my first favorite author and my first favorite book as a child.
Okay.
Alexander Dumas and the Three Musketeers.
Wow. Favorite too.
I love that book.
Yes.
I, I read it the first time in Greek. Somebody got it for me as a Christmas present, I think.
Yes.
And I read that book. That book was tattered by the time I was through with it.
Yes.
It had intrigue, it had love, and you know what? What's really strange? It had infidelity. It had people who were falling in love with people other than their husbands or wives. Like the Queen of France was in love with the Duke from England, and one of the Musketeers was in love with a married woman, and all that. And
Yes.
it made me realize that these things happen at an early age. So, I was not shocked when later on in life when I heard that things like that were happening for real. I didn't have like, oh my God, it's, and I
Shocking.
understand. It helped me understand. So I like the realistic aspect of it, and the combination. Like I said, it also brought me back to the Casablanca story, that these are multifaceted stories. The people are alive. You can feel them. You can get a vibe from them. And I have to say this, and there's some stories that I've read, and I don't want to take down anybody for doing that, but Tom Clancy was big on this. He was big on details, big on the story, the thriller and all that. But his people stories, the characters were two dimensional for me, in my view. There was no in depth. There was, like he wrote about him, but they were like caricatures. They were memes, and I think when you write, you need to go past that. At least your main characters have to have depth in them. Um,
Yes. Definitely. So how about the Count of Monte Cristo? Do you love that too?
it was interesting. It wasn't as to me. It wasn't as good as Three Musketeers, but it was one of my childhood books, and I felt sorry for the poor guy. I felt sorry for everybody. As a matter of fact, you can't help but finish that book, and you're like, oh my God, everybody was tragic.
Definitely.
I, I
That's
even I even felt sorry for that policeman who was going after him.
definitely. So if you describe your writing, what is it, Mr.
Um,
Kelly?
it's a glimpse, a window into the human relationship experience of humanity. I I want to write a story whenever I write it, thinking of this one premise that has stayed in my mind since the first time I heard it years ago. We are driven by human emotions, basic human emotions, and the emotion of jealousy of a man 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece, in the Middle Ages, today, 100 years from now or 1,000 years from now is not going to be any different. If he's human, it's not going to be any different if he looks across the room and he sees his woman being a little too friendly with another guy. Those feelings, those emotions, and you can say that for fear, you can say that for you name your base emotion, they all apply. So in my mind, I try to get into the minds of these people, and then present that story and why they do what they do and how they think. Um, and yes, there's sexuality in it, but the main part is, these people and what do they think and why do they do what they do.
In the future, is it possible that you can combine science fiction and steamy scene in the novel
Oh
that you're
yes,
writing?
yes. I have one
In
in the
in
works. Yeah,
Oh, okay, that's be awesome.
yes.
So it's
Uh,
just like Star Wars with the steamy scenes.
kind of. It's if I may, and I won't give too much away. It's about a veteran of a future war who goes home, and he has trouble adjusting, and from his injuries and from everything he saw, and his wife ends up leaving the house. She pays all the bills, but she goes to stay with her mother. And she basically tells him, until you sort your life out, I can't be around you with the kids. You almost hit me in front of them. That's not going to happen again. But I'll give you a chance to fix your life and all that. And he's trying to sort out everything that happened, everything he saw. He has like memories of his experiences, and at the same time he's trying to deal with the fact that it's been so long that he's gone back to his wife, that now she's got a boyfriend. And so that's where he's at. So once again, this take away the science fiction and this could be now.
Okay, that's be awesome. So let's go back to the Greek literature. What part of Greek literature that you like best?
Well, obviously, because of the historical aspect, I am a student of history, of the history major in college. Herodotus, the writer of ancient Greece, was a big influence. But he's early, and his work is not exactly polished. It was early period. Now there were others afterwards, but uh, he's mainly it. Now, when it comes to theater, believe the writer of Lysistrata, I think it was Aristophanes.
Yes.
I mixed the names, but yeah, he wrote a comedy about the war between the Athenians and the Spartans, and how the women in Athens went on strike because their husbands were away and they weren't getting any sex.
Yeah. Yes.
So they locked themselves up on the Acropolis, and the men, those that were home, they would say, "Well, come on down, I need you," and they would say, "No, we're on strike until you finish the war." I found that story hilarious. And once again, you see the theme and where my mind went. to the sex.
Yes, definitely. And one of the greatest Greek literature that I remembered is all about Oedipus Rex when he realized that he married his own mother, right?
Yes, yes,
I,
yeah. That, but in uh, while Oedipus Rex discusses it, it also moralizes and basically has to make the story a tragedy. It has to have a tragic end because, even the ancient Greeks believed that incest was wrong. So the story had to be that what he did was wrong. It wasn't a neutral story where there's no judgment. But yes, I will give this to my ancestors. They didn't shy away from topics of importance or of interest. Nobody will say that they were boring writers.
yes.
They saying that they said that it was wrong for him with his mother. At the same time, it was not uncommon for cousins to get married within a family to preserve the family wealth within the family. Uh,
Yes.
as as a matter of fact, the king Leonidas, who was at Thermopylae, the 300 story, that
Yes.
guy, he was married to his brother's daughter.
Okay.
Yeah, Gorgo, the queen of Sparta, was the daughter, and I forget now the guy's name, but the guy who had been king before Leonidas, she was his daughter. So you see that they had some incest in their culture and their society, but not immediate family members. Unlike the Persians, who indulged in that.
Yes. So you do you love history reading it?
Yes, and uh, I like the aspect of it that it's people's stories, um, not the dates. And I mean, yeah, you need the dates to put it in context, but
Yes.
it's the people stories. When you read about uh, a character and you find out that in real life he was a cad and a liar or a woman chaser and all this, all of a sudden that person becomes alive and you say, I could put him in one of my stories.
So, Mr. Cal, so if the Indian people have Kama Sutra, how does the ancient Greece have to?
Unfortunately, I don't think my ancestors got around to writing a book like the Kama Sutra. I wish they had, because we'd be proud of it.
Yes.
um, but I think that theirs was more they knew that it was part of their life, but let me rephrase that. We don't know if somebody did, and the text just disappeared in history or something to that regard. But as far as I know, there isn't a Greek Kama Sutra. So thank you, India, for writing it.
Yes. Inspiring, right?
Yep.
Yes. So before we go on, Mr. Cal, I just want to invite you to listen to my other podcast, Movie 101, with Patrick Moog. We talk about movies and series and a lot more. So please do listen. Movie 101. So, Mr. Cal, what is the best highlight of my decision?
Actually, it is her decision moment. That is the moment where she has, as some Christians call her come to Jesus moment, where she realizes the stark reality of her situation, that her husband is not going to become what she wants him to be. And she has to decide what she's going to do. And we don't want to spoil it by telling people what she does, but it's that moment where she comes to term with it, that this is it. This isn't going to be a change. She's not going to be able to fix him. Um, you know,
Yes. So if you have a second option for your title of My Decision, what is it?
I never considered it. How about you promised?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. One of the, if I may, there's a moment in the story that she says something to him. The reason why I say you promised. There's a moment in the story where she basically accuses him of cheating on her, and he says, "How did I cheat on you?" And she said, "You cheated me out of my sex life.
Oh,
You
yeah.
promised that I was going to be your one and only, and you were going to be my one and only. And if I needed it, I would come to you, but you're not delivering. So you cheated me." So that's why I
Oh.
would say you promised, but I like my decision better.
That be awesome. My decision is expandable.
um, it could be, it could be. But what I would like to do, if I did, is write maybe a different story. And here's where that science fiction story I was telling you about the veteran. I've been kicking around the idea of doing other standalone stories involving decisions by people, um, to where they have a moment in time where they have to decide, do I go this way or do I go that way? There are the crossroads in their life. And while that can be sexual at times and have some sexuality in it, um, everybody every day in their life has those decisions to make.
Yes. If you want to revise this book, which chapter you want to revise?
I was thinking about it. I reviewed the book before we talked so that I can have it fresh in my head. I mean, I wrote it over a year ago, almost 2 years when it started. I debated whether I should have more about the husband, like, before the marriage and all that. But the more I think about it, the more I like it the way that it is right now. That it's about the wife, because it's her decision, not his decision. Okay. And so I kind of like it the way that it is. I'm sorry if I don't have anything
No worries.
deep to say.
Yeah. So how many chapters are there in My Decision? How many
uh,
chapters?
there are a total of 9.
So for those 9 chapters, which one do you like writing with, or you
Uh,
enjoy the most?
um, the chapter called Coming to Terms, when this isn't just a wait a second, I'm looking through it real quick on my laptop so that I can um, see the part where no, actually it's the one after, the one that says uh, it was my call. And at the end of that chapter, by the end of that chapter, um, she has come to terms with everything, and now it becomes the now it's now it's the solution part. It's sort of like an old Star Trek episode where the first 20 minutes was the problem, the second part was deciding what to do, and the third part was the what to do part. um, this is sort of like the middle of the story where the, we found out what her issue was, and she's come to terms with it. She's thought about it, figured out what the issue is and what she's going to do. And then the last part, the last 3 chapters or 4 are basically what happens and the interaction between her and her husband and all that and how they deal with it. But yeah, that was my favorite part because you're like everything culminates there.
Yes, definitely. So, Mr. Callie, can you please invite our listeners to buy all your books?
If you're a reader of um, books about the human experience, human relationships, and believe, like I do, that human sexuality is an important aspect of our lives, you haven't lived until you've read my books. And not just my decision, but the rest of my 29 other books that I have written, be they in serious form or individuals. Um, I have um, some series from 8 chapters, which is Jane's Diaries, all the way down to 2 chapters for Christmas presents or Their Temptation. Although I'm thinking about writing a third for Their Temptation. Uh, and the rest are in various levels, 4 chapters, five, six, depending. So you get a pretty diverse idea of human sexuality and things that people do in marriage to spice it up. And it's not just one thing; it's multiple things. So different books have different. Depending on what you're interested in, you find something in my books. I mean, there's in Jane's Diaries, you have a woman who is basically cheating on her husband. Um, there's no openness between them, as opposed to the series Forbidden Lust, where the husband and wife started together and go through it together. Um, that's, by the way, that in multiple of my series, there's that underlying theme that while these people may involve others in their sex life, they still love one another. They still want to keep their families together. And divorce is not their first go-to. Um, they're there's love and understanding, and then there's other people.
Definitely. Thank you, Mr. Callie, for your time.
Thank you very much.
Morning, people. See you soon.